The smell of rancid butter and old sweat clings to the air like a damp shroud, a suffocating perfume of the forgotten rising from the floorboards. I stand alone in the cavernous lobby of the Orpheum, where the silence isn't just an absence of sound but a physical presence that eats at the jagged edges of my sanity. The fluorescent lights overhead hum a high-pitched, electric dirge, their dim, sickly yellow glow pulsing like a dying heart in a ribcage of shadows. It is a loneliness that scratches at the inside of my skull, a hollow, rhythmic ache that tells me I am the last witness to a world that has already rotted away into the dark. Every night starts with the same ritualistic decay. The crowds bleed out through the heavy brass doors, leaving behind a graveyard of crushed paper cups and sticky floors that grip my boots with a desperate, cloying touch. I pick up the remnants of their brief joys, the half-eaten shadows of their lives, and I feel like a scavenger picking through the entrails of a tomb. This theatre is an architectural skeleton, its ribs made of velvet and rusted steel, and I am the maggot tasked with cleaning the bones before the sun dares to rise. There is no wind here, only the stagnant draft of the air conditioning that tastes of copper and dust. My boots click against the linoleum, a rhythmic, lonely metronome in the vast, echoing void of the lobby. There is no one to talk to, no one to hear the buzzing static of my own thoughts, which grow louder as the clock ticks toward the witching hour. Just the flicker of the lights, casting long, distorted shadows that stretch across the patterned carpet like ink spills on a fresh wound. I move toward the hallway where the screening rooms wait, a row of dark, expectant maws ready to swallow the light and anything else that wanders too close to their thresholds. The air grows colder the further I drift from the entrance. The hum of the projectors has long since ceased, replaced by the internal, grinding static of a building that refuses to sleep, a structure that remembers every scream ever projected on its walls. My flashlight beam is a weak, trembling finger in the dark, revealing the peeling wallpaper that looks like sloughing skin, damp with the humidity of 1,000 exhaled breaths that never found their way out. It is gothic in its decay, a palace built for dreams that turned into necrotic nightmares. I reach the corridor leading to the deep back, the place where the shadows seem to have weight and mass. Most of the rooms are harmless, just hollow boxes smelling of dust and old upholstery. But at the very end, past the rusted fire exit and the janitor's closet that smells of bleach and ancient rot, lies screening room number 13. We don't talk about room 13. The manager, a man whose face looks like it was carved out of grey soap and left to melt in the sun, gave me the list of rules on my first day. His hands were shaking, a frantic vibration that matched the flickering lights. He didn't look me in the eye. He just told me to never enter after midnight, never look at the screen if it is black, and never, under any circumstances, listen to the whispering that leaks through the heavy velvet curtains. Tonight, the air around room 13 feels thick and viscous, like I am walking through a pool of cooling gelatin. The fluorescent tube above its door is worse than the others. It doesn't just flicker, it screams in a high-frequency whine that only the lonely and the broken can hear. It casts a strobing, violet-tinted shadow that makes the heavy oak door seem to vibrate, a gateway to a void that shouldn't exist in a world governed by physics. I feel the pull of it, a gravity of despair that wants to drag me into its lightless center. I stop 10 feet away, my breath hitching in my throat. The loneliness here is different. It is not just being alone, it is the sensation of being replaced by something colder and more permanent. I look at my hands in the dim, stuttering light, and for a terrifying second, they look translucent, the bones beneath the flesh glowing with a sickly, necrotic light as if I am already part of the theater's architecture. I am a ghost in my own life, a silent spectator to a film that ended decades ago, playing to an empty house. The silence emanating from room 13 isn't empty. It is heavy, pregnant with the ghosts of every scream ever recorded on celluloid, a concentrated essence of terror that has seeped into the very drywall and insulation. I grip my mop handle until my knuckles turn a bruised white. The wood is cold and damp with a sweat that isn't mine, a moisture that feels like it was bled out of the walls themselves. I have to clean the lobby, the restrooms, the other 12 rooms. I have to stay away from the void. I have to pretend I don't hear the static. But the void has a voice. It whispers in the tone of a mother I haven't seen in years, a jagged sound like broken glass grinding against bone. It tells me that I've always been here, that the theater is all there is, and the world outside is just a flickering projection on a rotting, mold-covered sheet. The fluorescent lights pulse one last time, a blinding, agonizing flash of white that leaves my vision swimming with purple spots, and in that moment of absolute blindness, I hear the door to room 13 creak open. Just an inch. Just enough for the static to pour out like black bile. I am the only one here. I am the only witness to the rot that waits behind the curtain. The night shift has only just begun, and the darkness in room 13 is already hungry for a lead actor. I pull the laminated rulebook from the back pocket of my grease-stained trousers. It is a heavy, damp thing, the edges frayed like a rotting shroud. The paper inside isn't printed by any machine I recognize. The ink looks like dried scabs, dark and crusted against the yellowed parchment. My flashlight flickers, caught in a rhythmic dance with the buzzing neon sign over the concession stand. Pink and blue light stabs at the darkness, bleeding into the puddles of spilled soda on the floor. Every time the light dies, the hallway to room 13 stretches, the walls pulsing like the throat of a great, dying beast. The rules are clear. They are the only thing keeping the static from reaching out and stitching my eyes shut. Rule number 1. Never look directly at the screen if the projector is running without a reel. The void there is not empty. It is a vacuum of memory, a white-hot hole in reality that will suck the soul right out of your teeth. I feel the cold air pouring out of that 1-inch gap in the door. It smells of ozone and copper, the metallic tang of a fresh kill. My breath hitches, a jagged lump of ice in my chest. The neon hums louder, a high-pitched scream of electricity that vibrates in my jaw. I am a ghost in a cathedral of celluloid, a witness to the cinematic rot that festers when the audience goes home. Rule number 2. If you see a patron sitting in the back row after the credits are finished, do not ask them to leave. They have paid for their seat with something more valuable than coin. You must clean around them. Do not let your shadow touch theirs. If they speak, the words will sound like a radio tuned to a dead frequency. Do not answer. If you answer, you become part of the feature presentation. I take a step forward. The carpet beneath my boots is tacky, saturated with decades of spilled secrets and phantom sweat. The static from room 13 is louder now, a physical pressure against my eardrums. It's not just noise. It's a chorus of 1,000 voices trapped in a feedback loop, screaming behind a veil of grey snow. I see the flicker of the projector through the gap. It's throwing a light that shouldn't exist, a sick, ultraviolet glare that turns my skin the color of a bruise. Rule number 3. The manager is not your friend. If you see him walking toward room 13 with a bucket of silver nitrate and a bone saw, you hide in the projection booth. You do not look through the glass. You wait until the wet, slapping sounds stop. The silence of the theater is a lie. Beneath the hum of the neon and the crackle of the static, I can hear the building breathing. The pipes groan with the weight of something heavy and viscous moving through them. I think of the previous janitor, the man whose locker I inherited. His name was scratched out of the record books, replaced by a smear of black bile. They said he stopped following the rules. They said he tried to close the door to room 13 when the movie was still playing. I reach out a hand, my fingers trembling in the strobing light. The air near the door is thick, like walking through cobwebs made of burnt hair. My skin crawls, 1,000 invisible insects dancing under the surface. I can feel the lead actor waiting. It's not a man. It's a shape, a silhouette carved out of the very darkness that room 13 breeds. It stands behind the velvet curtain, its edges blurred by the static, waiting for me to break the final, most important commandment. Rule number 4. Do not let the light in room 13 go out. If the projector dies, the screen becomes a doorway. And the things on the other side are very, very hungry for a new perspective. The neon sign above me pops, a shower of sparks raining down like dying stars. The pink glow vanishes, leaving only the sickly blue. In the sudden shift, I see a hand, pale, elongated, and missing the fingernails, grip the edge of the door from the inside. It doesn't pull the door shut. It pulls it open. Just another inch. The static surges, a tidal wave of grey needles that pricks at my vision until the world starts to dissolve into a grainy, low-budget nightmare. I am the only witness. I am the only one left to sweep the dust of dead stars and the scales of forgotten monsters. The theatre is a tomb, and room 13 is the open mouth of the grave. I can taste the rot now, a bitter, charcoal flavour on the back of my tongue. The darkness isn't just hungry, it's lonely. It wants an audience. It wants someone to sit in the front row while the film of their own life is played back, frame by frame, until the celluloid catches fire and burns everything to ash. I look down at the rulebook. The ink is moving. The letters are rearranging themselves into a new shape, a new warning that I haven't seen before. My flashlight dies. The blue neon flickers once, twice, and then goes dark. The only light left is the screaming white void pouring out from behind the door of room 13. The static is no longer a sound. It's a touch. It's a cold, vibrating hand wrapping around my throat, pulling me toward the gap. The jagged language of the void whispers in my ear, telling me that the night shift is eternal. There are no more rules, the whispers say. There is only the screen. There is only the rot. There is only the silence that follows when the projector finally stops clicking. I reach for the handle, my fingers sinking into the wood as if it were soft, decaying flesh. I am the lead actor now, and the curtain is finally rising on a show that never ends. The door behind me doesn't just close, it heels shut. The seal is seamless, a thick, pressurized silence that sucks the air right out of my lungs, replacing it with something heavy, stale, and tasting of copper. The darkness in Screen 13 isn't a lack of light. It is a physical weight, a velvet shroud that clings to my skin like wet tar. I stand on the threshold, my boots sinking into the carpet. It should be threadbare, industrial-grade nylon, but instead, it feels like walking on a tongue, moist, yielding, and textured with thousands of tiny, vibrating papillae. Then I hear it. The sound that shouldn't be here. Crunch. Pop. It is the sound of 1,000 moviegoers enjoying a matinee, but the rhythm is all wrong. It isn't the casual, mindless snacking of a human audience. It's a staccato, wet snapping, like bone being ground into powder between serrated molars. It's coming from the rows. I hold my breath, and the sound intensifies, a cacophony of phantom consumption. Crunch. Pop slurp. I reach out, my hand trembling, searching for the end of a row. My fingers don't find plastic or faux leather. They sink into something cold and porous, something that feels like the calcified remains of a ribcage upholstered in weeping sores. The dread isn't a sharp spike, it's a rising tide of bile in the back of my throat. I shouldn't have looked down. Even in this void, I can see the floor beginning to shimmer with a pale, sickly luminescence. It's the popcorn. It covers the floor in drifts, a sea of bloated, yellowed kernels that look less like corn and more like severed teeth, or perhaps shriveled larvae. They pulse with a faint, internal static. Every time I take a step, they don't crunch. They scream in a frequency so high it makes my ears bleed. The smell hits me next, a suffocating mixture of rancid butter and the sweet, cloying stench of a shallow grave in midsummer. It is the odor of things that have been forgotten and allowed to ferment in their own regret. I move deeper into the theater, drawn by a gravity I cannot fight. The screen is a massive, rectangular wound in the front of the room. It isn't white. It's the color of a cataract, a milky, sightless eye staring back at me from the abyss. The static from the projector, which I know is turned off, which I know has been unplugged for decades, begins to hum. It's a low-frequency vibration that rattles my teeth in their sockets. It sounds like a million flies trapped behind a pane of glass. The sound of the popcorn is getting louder now, transitioning from a snack to a slaughter. It's coming from the seats. I can see the silhouettes now, blacker than the blackness around them. They sit perfectly still, hunched over, their long, spindly limbs tucked neatly into the narrow aisles. They don't have faces, only vertical slits that open and close in time with the popping sounds. They are eating the void, stuffing handfuls of that grey, pulsating popcorn into those jagged maws, their throats bulging as they swallow the static. I am the lead actor. That's what the rules said. But no one told me the script was written in the language of my own nightmares. I try to turn back, but the aisle has elongated. The rows of seats have multiplied, stretching out into an infinite, rotting geometry. I am walking on a conveyor belt of decay. The phantom popcorn begins to rise, swirling around my ankles like a tide of biting insects. It's warm, fever warm. It sticks to my trousers, the butter turning into a thick, black ichor that begins to dissolve the fabric. Crunch. Pop. The sound is inside my head now. It's the sound of my own thoughts being chewed up and spat out. I look at the screen, and for a split second, the milky film clears. I see myself. I am standing in the center of the aisle, my face a mask of frozen, jagged terror. But the me on the screen is different. My eyes have been replaced by two glowing embers of static, and my mouth is overflowing with that grey, necrotic corn. The audience, the things in the seats, slowly begin to turn their heads. It's a collective, mechanical movement, the sound of 100 dry necks snapping in unison. They aren't looking at the screen anymore. They are looking at the lead actor. The silence that follows is the loudest thing I have ever heard. It's a void so absolute it threatens to unmake my very atoms. I try to scream, but my throat is full of it. Popcorn. It's dry, sharp, and tastes of old film reels and dust. It's bubbling up from my stomach, a fountain of grey rot. I am becoming the concession. I am the snack and the spectacle. The projector clicks. A single beam of light, grey and flickering like a dying star, stabs through the darkness and hits me in the chest. It doesn't illuminate, it erodes. Where the light touches me, my skin begins to flake away in long, translucent strips like old celluloid. I am being projected onto the world around me, my very essence being spread thin across the jagged architecture of room 13. The phantom popcorn starts to fall from the ceiling now. A heavy, suffocating snow of teeth and butter. It fills my ears, my nose, the corners of my eyes. I sink to my knees, the floor swallowing me, the tongue of the carpet curling up to embrace its newest morsel. I look up one last time at the screen. The movie is starting. The title card is my own name, written in a font of splintered bone. The audience begins to clap. It's a wet, fleshy sound, like hands hitting open wounds. The show never ends. The reels just loop. And as the darkness finally fills my mouth, I realize the most terrifying rule of all, the one they didn't write down. The cleaning crew doesn't work here. We are just the intermission between the horrors. The static swells. The rot deepens. The crunching begins again, rhythmic and eternal, as the teeth on the floor begin to chew on the shadows of my soul. I am no longer the man who cleans the theater. I am the grease on the floor. I am the salt in the air. I am the scream that the next person will hear when they step through the door of screen 13, wondering why the popcorn smells like a funeral. The curtain doesn't fall. It collapses. And in the pitch black, the only thing left is the sound of something very large and very hungry, reaching into the bucket of the room and picking out the pieces of my life, one by one. Pop. Crunch. Silence. The silence is not an absence of sound. It is a presence. It is a heavy, pressurized weight that pushes against my eardrums until they throb with the rhythm of my own frantic pulse. I am standing in the center of screening room number 13, and the air smells like a grave that's been dug in a basement full of rusting film canisters. My flashlight is dead. Not just out of batteries, but dead, the plastic casing feeling cold and brittle in my hand as if the light itself was sucked out by the vacuum of the room. I broke the rule. The final, golden rule written in smeared ink on the back of the manager's office door: never look at the screen when the projector hums without a film. But I looked. I didn't just look, I stared. I watched the nothingness until the nothingness started to show me things. Then the strobe started. It began as a stutter in the darkness. A white-hot needle of light piercing the black from the projection booth behind me. It isn't a steady beam. It is a violent, jagged flickering, a staccato assault that turns the world into a series of frozen, disconnected frames. Flash. I see the rows of empty velvet seats, their red fabric looking like raw, flayed meat. Flash. The seats are closer. Flash. They are empty, but the indentations in the cushions are deep, as if something invisible and immensely heavy is sitting in every single one of them, watching me. Panic isn't a slow build. It's a physical blow to the gut. It's the realization that the geometry of the room has shifted. The exit sign, that neon green beacon of safety, isn't where it should be. Every time the light flashes, the door moves. It's on the ceiling. It's under my feet. It's a mile away at the end of a corridor of rotting wood and peeling wallpaper that didn't exist 10 seconds ago. I try to run, but the strobe light makes movement a nightmare. I am a figure in a stop-motion film, my legs moving in jerks, my hands clawing at air that feels thick as gelatin. The sound comes back then. It's the sound of the projector, but it's wrong. It's the sound of a bone saw cutting through wet timber. It's a wet, mechanical grinding that vibrates in my teeth. And underneath it, that sound from before. The crunch. The popcorn smell has soured, turning into the stench of burning hair and old, rancid fat. I realize now that the pieces of my life aren't metaphorical. With every flash of the strobe, I feel a memory being ripped out of my skull. I forget the name of my first dog. Flash. I forget the smell of my mother's kitchen. Flash. I forget the face of the woman I loved. They are being projected onto the screen behind the curtain. My life is being fed into the teeth of that hungry void, and the thing behind the screen is eating the celluloid of my soul. I scream, but the sound is swallowed by the static. The room is screaming with me. The walls are vibrating, the plaster cracking to reveal not brick, but a pulsing, obsidian-colored vein-work. I am in the throat of something. This theater isn't a building. It's a trap, a digestive organ designed to lure in the curious and the careless. The strobe light is getting faster. The intervals of darkness are shrinking, but the things I see in those brief windows of white are getting worse. I see it now. It is tall, too tall for the ceiling, its limbs bent at impossible angles like a broken umbrella. It has no face, only a flickering lens where mouth should be, and its skin is a translucent, sickly grey, like the underside of a dead fish. It's standing in the front row. No, it's in the 5th row. No, it's right in front of me. The strobe creates a terrifying illusion of teleportation. One moment the aisle is clear, the next, the thing is inches from my face, its breath smelling of ozone and copper. I stumble backward, tripping over a discarded bucket. The floor isn't carpet anymore. It's slick. It's wet. It feels like stepping on a tongue. I scramble toward the screen, thinking maybe there's a way behind it, a way out of the narrative. But the curtain isn't fabric. It's a heavy, rotting veil of dead skin, stitched together with silver wire. When I touch it, the strobe light hits a fever pitch. The frequency increases until the world is a blurring, nauseating smear of white and grey. My vision is fracturing. I see myself from the perspective of the projector. I see the back of my own head, my hair matted with sweat, my shoulders shaking. I am watching the movie of my own death. The thing with the lens face reaches out. Its fingers are long, spindly, tipped with shards of glass. It doesn't want to kill me. It wants to edit me. It wants to cut out the parts of me that are still human and leave the rest to loop forever in this light-starved hell. I try to remember my name. I can't. The word is a knot of static in my throat. I try to remember why I'm here, why I took this job, but all that's left is the rule. The rule I broke. The strobe light is so bright now it's blinding, a continuous roar of white fire that burns the images directly into my retinas. The room is dissolving. The seats are turning into ash. The walls are melting into a black liquid that defies gravity, flowing upward toward the projector's glare. I'm falling. Or maybe I'm being pulled. The large and hungry thing isn't a monster. It's the darkness itself. It's the silence that followed the pop. It's the vacuum left behind when a life is extinguished. I see the celluloid strips of my childhood flying past me, catching fire in the heat of the strobe. There's the day I learned to ride a bike, gone. There's the first time I felt heartbreak, burnt. There's the sound of my father's laugh, silenced. I am becoming a shadow, a flicker on the wall, a frame of film that got stuck in the gate and is slowly bubbling, melting, turning into a charred hole in the middle of the screen. The panic is a cold, sharp blade in my chest, but I can't even breathe to scream anymore. My lungs are full of the grey smoke of forgotten things. The strobe slows down. Flash. The room is empty. Flash. The projector is off. Flash. I am standing in the projection booth, looking down at the theater floor. But I'm not me. I'm the light. I'm the lens. I'm the cold, mechanical eye that watches the next boy walk in with a broom and a dustpan, wondering why the air smells like a funeral. I want to tell him to run. I want to tell him that the rules aren't there to keep the theater clean. They're there to keep the void fed. But I have no voice. I am only a sequence of images. I see him look up. I see him notice the curtain. I see him step toward room 13. The popcorn smells like lilies and formaldehyde. The curtain begins to tremble. And as the final strobe of my consciousness flickers out, I realize the most terrifying truth of all. The movie never ends. It just changes its cast. Pop. Crunch. The darkness is absolute, and it is starving. I feel the last piece of me, the memory of my own fear, being picked out of the bucket. It tastes like copper. It tastes like the end. The silence isn't just quiet. It's an appetite. And I am finally, completely, consumed. The light is gone. The screen is blank. But somewhere in the static, I am still screaming, a single, frozen frame of terror trapped in a reel that will never stop turning. Everything is void. Everything is rotting. The movie is over. Please exit to your left. There are no doors. There is only the flicker. Flash. 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 The strobe light isn't a light anymore. It's a heartbeat. The heartbeat of the theater. It beats in time with the grinding of the gears, a rhythmic, mechanical throb that echoes through the hollow cavity of my chest. I try to look at my hands, but they are translucent, like a double exposure. I can see the floor through my palms. I can see the dust motes dancing in the beam of the projector, each one a tiny, jagged piece of glass reflecting a different version of my failure. The panic has evolved. It's no longer a sharp, frantic thing. It's a dull, heavy ache, the realization that I am part of the machinery now. I am the grain on the film. I am the flicker in the bulb. I am the reason the next person will feel a chill when they walk past the heavy, velvet curtains of room 13. The creature, the editor, is standing right behind me. I don't need to turn around to see it. I can feel its cold, glass breath on the back of my neck. It's holding a pair of silver scissors, the blades long and curved like a hawk's beak. It's looking for the loose ends. It's looking for the bits of me that don't fit the story it wants to tell. I try to pray, but the words are just more static. Our Father, who art in nothing. The heaven I believed in has been edited out. The God of this place is a malfunctioning projector and a screen that never gets enough blood. The strobe light gives one final, violent burst. A white so intense it feels like it's peeling the skin off my bones. In that moment of total illumination, I see everything. I see the thousands of others who broke the rules. They are woven into the carpet. They are stuffed into the insulation of the walls. They are the shadows that jump when the light hits the corner of your eye. We are a collective history of curiosity gone wrong. And then, the black. Not the black of a dark room. The black of a world that has been erased. I am a ghost in the machine. A ghost in the grain. I am the reason you don't stay after the credits. I am the reason you don't look at the screen when the movie stops. Because the movie never stops. It's just waiting for a new pair of eyes. The strobe begins again, soft and rhythmic, somewhere deep in the basement of the world. Tick, tick, tick. The reel is empty. The theater is open. And the popcorn. The popcorn smells like you. The scent is a betrayal. It is the smell of my own sweat, the salt of my own tears, and the oily musk of my own fear, cooked under the high-voltage heat of a 1,000-watt bulb. I stand in the center of screening room 13, and the air is thick enough to choke on. The theater seats, upholstered in a velvet that looks like dried scabs in this flickering half-light, seem to lean inward, exhaling the stale breath of every audience that has ever sat here and vanished. I look up. The projection booth is a gaping wound in the back wall, a rectangular mouth leaking a singular, violent beam of white light. It isn't the soft, cinematic glow of a romantic comedy or the blue-tinged flicker of a thriller. This is a surgical light. It is a bleaching, sterile glare that carves the darkness into jagged pieces. I move toward the back of the house. My boots make no sound on the sticky carpet. The silence is a physical weight, a pressurized void that makes my eardrums throb with the phantom rhythm of the projector. Tick, tick, tick. It's the heartbeat of a mechanical god, and I am the only sacrifice left in the building. I reach the door to the projectionist's ladder, a rusted iron spine bolted to the brick. The metal is cold, but as I climb, the temperature rises. Heat radiates from the booth above like a fever. It smells of ozone and vinegar, the sour, rotting stench of decomposing nitrate film. This is the rot they warn me about in the handbook. Rule 9. If the air smells like a dying garden, do not look at the screen. But I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at the source. I haul myself into the booth. The brightness is an assault. It is a solid pillar of radiance, a white spear thrashing through the dust motes. The dust isn't just skin cells and lint here. It is grey static, tiny particles of silver halide suspended in the air, shimmering like the scales of a dead fish. And there, standing in the heart of the beam, is the projectionist. It isn't a man. It is a silhouette stitched together from discarded frames, a flickering patchwork of shadow and light that refuses to hold a consistent shape. It stands hunched over the massive Sentry projector, its fingers, long, translucent needles of celluloid, dancing over the tension rollers. The entity doesn't turn to look at me, but I feel its gaze. It is a gaze that exists in the frame rate, a strobe-like consciousness that sees me not as a person, but as a sequence of still images, frozen and helpless. The light passing through the entity's body casts a shadow on the screen below, but the shadow isn't a silhouette of the creature. It is a shadow of me. I watch my own outline on the distant screen, 40 feet tall, twitching in agony as the projectionist adjusts the focus knob. Every turn of the dial sends a jolt of static through my nervous system. I am being projected. My marrow is the film stock, My memories are the soundtrack, a distorted hiss of white noise and forgotten screams. The projectionist's head, if you can call that flickering bulb a head, swivels toward me. There is no face, only a lens. A glass eye, cracked and weeping a black, oily substance that smells of scorched earth. In the reflection of that lens, I see the void. It isn't empty. It is filled with the discarded takes of my life, the moments I thought were private, now being fed into the hungry maw of the machine. The entity begins to feed the film faster. The clicking speeds up, a frantic, rattling sound like 1,000 cicadas dying in a jar. I try to scream, but the sound is caught in the shutter. My voice is a series of jagged pops and clicks, a sync error in the reality of the room. The brightness in the booth intensifies until the walls dissolve. There is no theater anymore. There is no mall, no city, no world outside the exit signs. There is only the beam. It is a white tunnel, a Gothic cathedral of pure, unadulterated energy that is stripping the meat from my bones. I can see my own ribs through my skin, glowing like the ribs of a paper lantern. The projectionist reaches out. Its hand is a blur of motion, moving at a frame rate my eyes can't track. It touches my chest, and where its fingers meet my skin, the world turns to static. My flesh dissolves into black and white grain. I am becoming a grainy, low-budget version of myself, a flickering ghost lost in the midtones. The entity leans in close, the heat from its lens eye blistering my forehead. It whispers, a sound like a film reel snapping at high speed. It tells me that the movie never ends because the film is a circle. We are all just loops, played over and over for the amusement of the dark things that sit in the back row of the universe. The rules weren't there to protect me. They were there to season me, to ensure that when I finally climbed those stairs, my fear would be at its peak, my soul perfectly exposed to the light. The popcorn smell returns, stronger now, cloying and sweet. It's the smell of my own life being dry roasted in the heat of the projection. The entity pulls a strip of film out of its own chest and offers it to me. I look down at the translucent ribbon. It shows me a frame of myself, standing right here, looking at the film. And the next frame shows me screaming. And the next frame shows me gone. The beam pulses. One final, blinding flash that turns the world into a flat, white sheet. The mechanical grind reaches a crescendo, a scream of metal on metal, and then, silence. The light is still there, but it's different now. It's coming from inside me. I look down at my hands, and I can see the dust motes dancing through them. I am the projection. I am the flickering light that the next janitor will see when he breaks the rules. I am the shadow on the wall that won't leave when the power goes out. The reel is empty. The theater is open. And somewhere down in the lobby, a new set of keys is jingling. A new pair of eyes is walking through the door, blinking against the darkness, smelling the salt and the butter and the rot. I wait in the booth. I wait for the shutter to click. I wait to be seen. Because in screening room 13, the only thing worse than being watched is being forgotten. The static in my veins begins to hum. The strobe begins again, soft and rhythmic, somewhere deep in the basement of the world. Tick, tick, tick. The light is a hunger that never fades. It bleaches the soul until there is nothing left but the grain. I reach for the focus knob, my fingers thin and translucent as old celluloid. I wait for the next witness to step into the beam. I wait for them to realize that the movie isn't playing on the screen. It's playing on them. The air is thick with the scent of the concession stand, a funeral pyre of salt and grease. I am the projectionist now. I am the flicker in the corner of your eye. I am the reason you never look back at the booth when the lights go down. The film is rolling. The frame is centered. And the popcorn. The popcorn smells like you. I can see you now, sitting in the fourth row, eyes wide, mouth open. You think you're watching a story. You think this is just a script, but the light is hitting your retinas, and the silver is staining your mind. By the time the credits roll, there won't be enough of you left to leave the theater. You'll just be another frame in the loop, another scratch on the lens, another ghost in the machine. The projection beam is a bridge, and I am crossing over. The white void is beautiful. It is the end of color, the end of sound, the end of everything but the flicker. Don't look up. Whatever you do, don't look up at the booth. Because I'm looking back at you, and I've got plenty of film left to burn. The theater is a tomb of light, and the show is just beginning. The audience is silent, their faces bleached white by the intensity of the glare. They aren't breathing. They don't need to. They are part of the scenery now, part of the architecture of the void. I feel the gears of the projector grinding against my own spine. I am the mechanism. I am the ghost in the gears. Every rotation of the reel pulls a little more of the world into the booth, grinding reality down into 24 frames of agony per second. The heat is unbearable, but I can't look away. I am the lens. I am the light. The screen is a vast, empty wasteland, waiting for me to fill it with your nightmares. And I have so many to show you. I have the ones about the dark water, the ones about the teeth in the walls, the ones about the face you see in the mirror when you think you're alone. The static is rising. It's a tide of grey noise, drowning out the world. The gothic spires of the theatre dissolve into lines of resolution. The noir shadows bleed into the white heat of the projection. There is no exit. There is only the loop. Tick, tick, tick. The countdown starts at 10. By the time it hits 0, you'll be nothing but a memory projected onto a dirty sheet in a room that doesn't exist. The light is everything. The light is all there is. I reach out a hand of flickering shadow and touch the glass. It's hot. It's so hot. It feels like home. The film snaps. The screen goes white. But the projection doesn't stop. It just moves inside your head. Welcome to Screening Room 13. We hope you enjoy the feature. It's going to last forever. The smell of the popcorn lingers, a salty, oily ghost in the back of your throat. It tastes like your own childhood, your own first date, your own last breath. It is the smell of a life being consumed by the glare. I am the projectionist, and you are the film. Let's see how you look in slow motion. The crank turns. The light flares. The world burns. And in the silence of the booth, the only sound is the wet, rhythmic slapping of the film against the take-up reel, a sound like a tongue lashing against a wound. The void is hungry. And you look delicious. The frame jitters. A hair caught in the gate dances across the screen like a dying insect. It's not a hair. It's a nerve. My nerve. Your nerve. We are all tangled in the celluloid now. The movie is you. The movie is me. The movie is the hole in the center of the world where the light comes from. And the light is blinding. It is a gothic nightmare of silver and shadow, a noir detective story where the only clue is the blood on the lens. The projectionist is smiling. I can feel the curve of the glass. Close your eyes. It won't help. The light goes right through the lids. The reel is spinning faster now. The images are blurring into a single, continuous scream. This is what happens after closing. This is why we have the rules. But you didn't listen. You never listen. You just keep watching. And the popcorn. God, the popcorn. It smells so much like you. The heat in the booth is melting the film. The images are sagging, dripping down the screen like hot wax. My own face is a puddle of grey static on the floor. I try to hold onto the edges of the frame, but they are jagged and sharp, cutting into my translucent fingers. The entity is gone, or perhaps I have finally become it. There is no distinction anymore between the man who cleaned the floors and the thing that haunts the light. We are the same flicker, the same error in the broadcast. The theatre is a ribcage, and the projection booth is the heart, pumping white fire through the veins of the aisles. I can see the dust motes screaming as they are incinerated in the beam. I want to join them. I want to be nothing but ash and light. The screen is showing a close-up now. It's an eye. A massive, bloodshot eye that fills the entire theatre. It's my eye. It's your eye. It's the eye of the thing that lives in room 13. The pupil is a black hole. It's a drain. And everything is sliding into it. The seats, the screen, the red velvet curtains, the sticky floors, the smell of the salt. It's all being sucked into that dark, circular void in the center of the light. The clicking of the projector is deafening now. It's a jackhammer in the brain. Tick, tick, tick. The end is coming. But in room 13, the end is just the beginning of the next loop. The film is bubbling. The smell of vinegar is overwhelming. It's the smell of history rotting. I reach for the power switch, but my hand passes right through it. I am made of light. I have no mass. I have no will. I am only the sequence. The projection beam reaches out and touches the back of your head. You can feel the heat, can't you? You can feel the static crawling up your spine, turning your hair into tiny antennas for the void. You're part of the screening now. You're the star of the show, and the audience is waiting. They are sitting in the dark, their empty sockets fixed on you. They are the ones who didn't follow the rules. They are the ones who stayed after the credits. They are hungry. And the popcorn. The popcorn is the only thing left of them. The strobe begins again, soft and rhythmic, somewhere deep in the basement of the world. The reel is empty. The theater is open. And the light. The light is you. The grey light of the early morning didn't break through the clouds so much as it bled through them, a bruised and sickly pallor that offered no warmth. It filtered through the high, grime-crusted windows of the lobby, illuminating the dust motes that danced like microscopic flies over the threadbare carpet. This was the hour of the dead, the time when the world was supposed to wake up, but here, inside the suffocating embrace of the theater, the sun felt like an intruder. It was a witness to a crime that had been committed over a century of screenings. I stood there, the mop handle slick in my palms, watching the way the greyness clung to the corners. There was no hope in this light. It was the color of a guttering candle, the color of a cataract over a dying eye. The theater breathed around me, a heavy, wet sound like a lung filled with fluid. I could feel the weight of the stories told in the dark, the millions of eyes that had stared at the silver screen until they forgot how to see the real world. I turned toward the manager's office, my boots heavy on the floor. Every step felt like wading through chest-deep water. The door was a slab of rotted oak, its grain twisted into the shapes of screaming faces. It groaned as I pushed it open. On the desk sat the ledger, its leather binding cracked and peeling like sunburnt skin. This was the final rule. Rule 13. When the reel is empty and the light is you, you sign the book. I didn't want to look at the pages. I knew what was there. I knew that the ink wouldn't be ink. The air in the office tasted of ozone and ancient, stagnant water. It was the smell of a void, a place where physics had given up and folded into itself. I reached for the pen, a jagged thing carved from a splinter of the original screen from room 13. It felt cold, a freezing needle that bit into my skin before I even touched the nib to paper. My hand moved without my permission. It was a jagged, mechanical motion, guided by the static that hummed in my marrow. I watched as the tip of the pen tore into the meat of my thumb, drawing a thick, dark bead of red. It didn't hurt. Pain was a luxury of the living, and I was something else now. I was a transition. I was the flicker between frames. The blood hit the parchment and hissed, bubbling as it sank into the fibers. It didn't stay red. It turned black, a deep, oily void black that seemed to swallow the grey light of the morning. I signed my name, but the letters weren't my name. They were symbols, ancient and jagged, the language of the things that live in the shadows behind the projection. The contract was sealed. I felt the theater tighten its grip on my soul, a physical sensation of iron bands wrapping around my chest. I walked back out into the lobby, the greyness becoming more intense, more suffocating. The popcorn machine was still humming, a low, rhythmic throb that mimicked a heartbeat. I looked inside the glass. The kernels weren't white anymore. They were grey, coated in a fine layer of ash. They looked like teeth. Thousands of small, calcified teeth, the only remnants of the people who had stayed after the credits rolled. They had been chewed up by the atmosphere of room 13 and spat out into the concession stand. I realized then that I wouldn't be cleaning them up. I would be joining them. My skin felt tight, turning a translucent, waxy shade of slate. I could see the static dancing under my veins, a frantic, buzzing energy that wanted to burst out. I made my way towards screening room 13-1 last time. The hallway seemed to stretch, the red carpet turning into a tongue that sought to swallow me whole. The posters on the walls were blank now, just white rectangles of blinding, empty light. There were no more movies. There was only the reel, and the reel was hungry. I pushed open the double doors of the theater, and the smell of rotting celluloid hit me like a physical blow. It was thick, cloying, the scent of 1,000 forgotten memories decomposing at once. The screen was no longer a flat surface. It was a portal of pure, vibrating grey, a window into a world of endless static. I looked down at the rows of seats. They weren't empty. They were filled with the husks of the ushers who had come before me, their bodies brittle and grey, their eyes replaced by flickering embers of silver light. They didn't move. They just stared at the screen, waiting for the next show to begin. I found my seat in the front row. It was waiting for me, the velvet worn down to the bone-white wood beneath. I sat down, and the chair felt like it was growing into my spine. The hopelessness was a physical weight now, a leaden shroud that draped over my shoulders. There was no escape. There was no morning. The grey light outside was just a reflection of the grey light inside. The projector began to hum, a sound like a swarm of hornets. The strobe started again, a soft, rhythmic pulsing that synced with the thudding of my dying heart. I looked up at the screen, and I saw myself. I saw myself standing in the lobby, mop in hand, looking at the grey light of the morning. It was a loop, a jagged, rotting circle of time that had no beginning and no end. I was the audience, I was the film, and I was the projector. My body began to dissolve into fine, grey particles, drawn toward the screen by a gravity I couldn't resist. I felt my memories being stripped away, one by one, until there was nothing left but the static. The theatre is a hungry god, and we are its tithe. We clean the floors to hide the stains of the souls that were digested here. We follow the rules to ensure the process is orderly. But in the end, the rules are just a script. And the script always ends the same way. The light isn't a beacon, it's a mouth. I closed my eyes, but I could still see the screen. It was burned into the back of my brain, a white-hot void that promised nothing but the end. The grey morning was gone. There was only the flicker. There was only the hum. There was only the void. I am the one who stays after the credits. I am the popcorn. I am the static. The theatre is open. It is always open. And the light is screaming. It is a soundless, jagged noise that tears through the fabric of reality. I felt my jaw unhinge, my mouth opening to join the chorus, but no sound came out. Only a cloud of grey ash. I watched my hands turn into smoke, the fingers elongated into wisps of shadow that reached for the silver screen. I was being pulled in, frame by frame, into the flickering celluloid. The hopelessness was complete now. It was a beautiful, terrifying realization. There was no need to fight. The theatre had won a long time ago. Every ticket sold, every bag of popcorn shared, every scream in the dark was just a brick in the wall of this cathedral of rot. I looked at the ushers beside me. They were smiling now, their lipless mouths pulled back in a grimace of eternal watching. We were the guardians of the void. We were the watchers of the end. The screen flared one last time, a blinding flash of necrotic white that burned away the last of my humanity. I felt the signature I had written in the ledger pulse in my chest, a hot coal of black blood that tethered me to this place forever. I was no longer a person. I was a sequence. I was the hidden frame between the images that tells you to be afraid. I was the shadow that moves when you look away. The grey light of the early morning finally touched the screen, but it didn't reveal the theatre. It revealed the truth. The theatre wasn't in the world. The world was inside the theatre. And we were all just waiting for the projectionist to turn off the light. But the projectionist was gone. The machine was running on the fuel of our collective despair. It would never stop. The real would never be empty. Because the light is us. And we are infinite. We are the rotting, jagged, beautiful static of the end. I leaned back into the velvet, my eyes wide and unblinking, and watched the movie start again. It was a story about a man who cleaned a theatre. A man who followed the rules. A man who thought there was a morning waiting for him. I watched him walk into the lobby. I watched him pick up the mop. I watched him die. And I laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering over a grave, as the strobe began to pulse, soft and rhythmic, deep in the basement of the world.